Today, we will be discussing the November 2024 predictions, and it is lining up to be a very intense and chaotic month. There's actually three very important transits that are happening in a month, and that's what we're going to be breaking down today using astrology. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. By the way, I practice Vedic sidereal astrology, so you'll notice that I use square looking charts. And also, if you're interested in a private reading, check down below for details and you can get information regarding that. And just as a reminder, these astrology readings, they're for entertainment purposes only. So let's go ahead and talk about the month of November because there's really three important major transits I see happening. But there's going to be other things like the full moon, the new moon, and things like that. But let's go take up the slide, and then I'm going to show you on the chart why some of these are going to be very important. So let's go ahead and just break that down for a moment. So the first thing I want to talk about in this month of November is Mars is slowing down in the sign of Cancer for the whole month of November. It's about to go retrograde on December 5th or December 5th, I believe. So during this time where it's slowing down, it's going to be only traveling from 4 degrees of Cancer to 11 degrees of Cancer. Now, remember, Mars is debilitated in the sign of Cancer. And that means when we think about vibrational energies, that's when Mars is in its lowest vibrational state, is when it's in its sign of debilitation, which is the sign of Cancer. So, what is Mars debilitated going to do as far as low vibrational tendencies? There's going to be a lot of anger. There's going to be a lot of rage. There's going to be a lot of this fueling the month of November. So there's going to be a lot of people not happy with the results. And of course, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning, the USA is having their election on November 5th. There's a lot of issues that are going to be coming up to the surface. So let me show you the chart for a moment. We'll talk about Mars just for a moment. This is the chart of November 3rd. That's going to be a very important date. November 3rd, mark your calendar on that one. That's right 2 days before the election. There's a very pivotal transit that's happening. But Mars is right here and it's slowing down. It's actually going this direction. When it's direct, it's going clockwise in the Vedic chart here. And then after December 5th, when it goes retrograde, it will be turning the other direction. So it's only going to travel between 4 degrees of Cancer to 11 degrees throughout the whole month of November. Well, it's slowing down in the sign of Cancer. And the sign of Cancer, it represents family. It represents our sense of security. It represents our protection. And so during this whole month, there's this sense of instability. There's this sense of this lack of security that's happening. There could be a lot of chaos happening in the month of November because of this very important transit. Now, on December 5th, I do feel like there's a buildup through November into December with this Mars transit, because when Mars goes retrograde in December, first week of December, it's going to release a powerful energy then. But this month of November, there's a lot of irritable energy, a lot of explosiveness as far as tempers go within families. There's a lack of security. There's definitely a feeling of people not being happy with election results, especially those of you in the USA, obviously. So let's go ahead and bring up the slide again. So that's the major thing. Then November 3rd, and this is very intense. Pluto and Mars are going to be direct opposition at 5 degrees of Cancer and 5 degrees of Capricorn. So they're going to be in opposition, which means they're in the opposite signs of each other. And it's so intense that this is right before the USA election day on November 5th. So let's go ahead and bring that up on the chart for a moment, because like the beginning of this month is just going to be right away. We're just going to be stepping right into this energy, this really intense energy. So this is an opposition. It's when the planets are opposite to each other. As you can see, Pluto's in about 5 degrees. I did adjust it a little bit just so I could make the first house be the sign of Aries in the natural zodiac. But you'll see there's Mars over there in the fourth house of Cancer here. They're in direct opposition. Now, the thing about Capricorn, Capricorn is the natural 10th house. It represents government, it represents leadership, it represents stability. But Pluto represents things like unseen forces, it represents things that happen under the table, it represents um, the forces of change that come into our life. So if you think of Mars and Pluto, both these very destructive like planets in opposition to each other, bringing that change. So we expect there's this instability. If we want to think in the government, there could be a dispute about who won. There could be a dispute on what's happening with the ballot counts and so forth. So we got to be careful about what's happening because tempers could be flaring because remember, Mars is in the low vibrational state, being in the sign of Cancer. So there's a big change happening within the government. Okay, this is a monumental election. So this is going to be very intense. There's a lot of hidden forces at work too, which makes me feel that there's a lot of unseen political operatives and so forth on the move this month. So let's go back to the slideshow. We have the USA election day after these, this cataclysmic transit that happens 2 days later. We have the USA election. Now, let me tell you, and I'm just going to stop for a second. There's a lot of conflict happening around the world right now. We know there's conflict in the Middle East. We know there's conflict in Eastern Europe. And, this Mars Pluto transit or this Mars Pluto opposition, this could be triggering a lot of events that could definitely throw different wrenches or different issues into the election. Okay, so there could be a lot of issues coming up with international events, things that are happening unseen. When I think about Pluto, I can even think of like cyber attacks, things happening behind the scenes, those kind of issues. So definitely there's a sense of instability there. So let's go bring the slide up again. The other big, huge transit, which I feel is going to be major this month. So we talk about Mars slowing down. That's number one. Pluto and Mars in opposition. That's number two. And the other major one that's a real biggie is Saturn finally going direct after months of being retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. Now, this is a really big factor when we're talking about the month of November. This is huge. Saturn is the lord of karma. Saturn is the planet that makes us pay back our karma. It's the planet that collects on any karmic debts. It brings justice in those things when we're thinking of Saturn. Let me show you Saturn in the chart. So Saturn's been retrograde for several months now. Here's Saturn in the astrology chart. It's been going retrograde. And then on November 15th, that's going to be a very important, and think about this. This is only 10 days after the USA election. Okay. So we already know there's a lot of karma happening this month of November with the Mars transit, Saturn transit, Mars, Pluto, lots of issues going on. So that's when Saturn is going to go direct again. And when Saturn goes direct, it's kind of like this energy of payback time. So when Saturn goes direct, it's this energy of payback time. It's this time where it's going to be in full force. It's going to be collecting debts. When it's retrograde, remember, when a planet's retrograde, there's this idea of the planet isn't functioning at it's powerful, but it's kind of like the Earth is still moving forward while the planet appears to be looking backward or appears to be heading backwards. Okay. So the planet's not catching up with the events that are on Earth. So when Saturn goes direct, it's like finally there's some sort of payback. There's some sort of karmic justice that's going to be happening. Now, the 11th house of Aquarius, I feel like with this transit, especially between now and the end of this Saturn transit, when Saturn changes signs in the Pisces, March 29th, 2025, I feel like there's going to be an economic crisis. Okay, so we are on the verge of some sort of big switch up with the economy because Aquarius is the natural 11th house. The 11th house represents networks. It represents business economies. It represents the stock market. It represents the middle class. It represents the working class. So there's been issues with affordable housing and those things. So I feel like the bills on that, if we want to call them metaphorical bills, they're coming due very soon here. So November, December, we are going to be on maximum alert for financial, any type of downward financial trends, and financial cascade or domino effects that are happening. One thing I want to point out to all of you is the price of gold is almost, I mean, it's almost doubled since 2020. So this shows the amount of, the amount of issues we've been having with the inflation and things going on in the economy. And I feel like things are about to come to a head, especially in the last few months of this Saturn transit. We could see a trigger point this month, just because of all this Mars energy that's really being unleashed. This could be a powerful trigger point here. Now, I feel like when Saturn goes direct, I do feel like we're going to feel like there's some sort of justice that's kind of moving forward now. We're going to feel like things are moving forward. We might feel like things are in limbo for the last, couple of years, especially, when it's an election year, there can kind of be things that are kind of put on the back burner, issues that are not being dealt with. Now, I've already given my prediction on who I believe is going to be the president. And watch my former video. I believe Kamala Harris is going to take the day on November 5th. I do believe there's going to be a lot of chaos, though. So we might not know on November 5th who exactly won, because we have all these heavy transits that are happening. So there could be some dispute in the month of November, some dispute regarding this, especially remember the Mars debilitated. That's going to cause a lot of anger on both sides of the aisle, by the way. I don't think it's going to be quite so easy for everybody. We have November 15th, which is also very powerful. The same day that Saturn goes direct in Aquarius, there's going to be a full moon in Aries, and it's going to be in the nakshatra of Kritika. And Kritika is a very ferocious sign. It's called the Razor. It's ruled by the sun. So it's a military and warlike type sign, which is very interesting. We could definitely be seeing some conflict be developing in November. And then towards the end of the month, we have the Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. That's going to be November 25th. Remember, Mercury goes retrograde for about 3 weeks. It does it about 3 to 4 times a year. So remember, during Mercury retrograde, you usually don't want to buy a car, get married, anything where you have to sign a contract, because things kind of go sour because you don't have all the relevant information. So let me show you that in the chart. What I find interesting, it's going to be in the sign of Scorpio, which is a very treacherous sign. It's the natural 8th house. So we see earlier in the month, when I took the snapshot of this chart, Mercury is already in the sign 8th house of Scorpio. And then that's going to be November 25th is when it's going to be making its retrograde motion. Okay. Now, when it's going through the 8th house represents investigations. It represents hidden issues, just kind of like what we talked about Pluto represent unseen things, hidden forces. So there could be a lot of destructive forces happening around that time of that Mercury retrograde. This could be a very pivotal point in regards to the economy, because remember, the 8th house, the natural 8th house, can represent things like bankruptcy. So that's there could be a debt crisis. There could be something happening around that time where there's a focus on those things. And it'd be really interesting it's really interesting to note, there might be a lot of people on Wall Street right now that are kind of waiting for the results of this presidential election. You've seen that when certain presidents win, the stock market will rally. When certain other ones don't, it's more of a mediocre type of performance. So this very much may impact, and actually, I don't even think I think this will impact how the markets are seeing the futures and what they're predicting as far as the economy goes. So this is going to be a really intense month. This is kind of like we're hitting the climax of the year here. We got November, and then December, first week of December, I feel like we're still going to be in this very climatic zone of all this energy that's stewing this month. So get prepared. It's going to be a wild ride. Of course, my recommendation is to find some quiet time to reflect, to mellow out during this Mars being debilitated right now. It's going to be bringing up a lot of difficult emotions for all of us. So take care of yourselves. Let me know what you think down below in the comments as far as what's going to be happening in November. Let me know what's going to happen in the election. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.